3 men, dark parking lot, 12 seconds, all 3 on the ground. She didn't run. She didn't call the police. She called her father. Then she went back to work. Because while they were busy burying her, forging documents, silencing witnesses, strings that had never once failed them, she was loading their own evidence onto their own presentation screen. Now she's standing on their stage, their microphone, their room, their board watching in silence, and the most powerful man in that building is reading his own name on the wall behind him. She's blind. She saw every move coming. The night before everything changed, Amara Rivers was blindfolded on a mat, taking down 2 grown men. Not sequentially, but together. The dojo smelled, the way it always, sweat and old wood, and something underneath that she had never been able to name. Something that felt like years of discipline made physical. Sensei Alfred Cross called it the smell of becoming. She had been breathing it since she was 9 years old, and she still didn't have a better word for it. The blindfold was soft from years of use, tied at the back of a knot Sensei Cross insisted on. Not too tight, not too loose. No excuses either way. 2 opponents. Both adults. Both had been training longer than her, technically, though Sensei Cross had a way of making that fact feel beside the point. They moved first. She heard the left heel lifting before the right, the soft displacement of air that meant an arm coming high and fast. She dropped her shoulder, let it pass over her, turned into the second attacker before he'd finished deciding to move. Her elbow found his sternum. Not hard enough to hurt him, hard enough to stop him. The first one came back. She was already somewhere else. 40 seconds, maybe 45. Then both of them were on the floor, and Amara was standing in the center of the room, breathing like she'd taken a slow walk. Sensei Cross did not applaud. He never applauded. He crossed the mat slowly and stood beside her with his arms folded and was quiet for a moment in the way that meant there was something coming worth waiting for. "The mat is flat," he said. "The mat is clean. The mat is the same size every time you step onto it." She waited. There was always more. "Out there," he said. "None of that is true." She untied the blindfold, folded it, set it on the edge of the mat. "I know," she said. "You know it here." He tapped his temple once. "You don't know it here yet." 2 fingers pressed to his sternum directly over his heart. She thought about arguing. She didn't, because he was right, and she hated that, and both of them knew it. She bowed. He nodded. That was the night before. The next morning, she got on a bus to Crestwood. Her father drove her to the station. James Rivers was not a man who made speeches. He was 6 feet 2 inches of former Marine, with hands that had built things and broken things, roughly equal measure, and a voice that stayed low even when he was upset, especially when he was upset. He carried her duffel bag even though she told him not to, set it down beside the bus door and stood there for a moment in the particular way he had, like he was memorizing her, which something she'd noticed he did ever since she was 9 and nearly didn't come home. "You call me," he said. "I will, not texts. Call me." "Dad." "I mean it, Amara." She found his arm. "Squeezed once, I know you do." He pulled her into a hug that lasted longer than either of them would have admitted to. Then she got on the bus. She heard him on the sidewalk until the engine pulled them away from the curb, and she knew that without seeing it, because she knew him, had memorized the specific weight of his presence, the way she memorized everything. By feel, by sound, by the 20,000 small details that added up to a person. She spent 2 hours with her hands folded in her lap and her face turned toward the window. Not because she could see anything, just because it was the direction she'd always looked when she needed to think. She tried not to think about her mother. The closer she got to Crestwood, the louder the memory became. She pushed it down, folded it, set it aside the way she set aside the blindfold after training. There would be time for that later. There was always time for that later. Crestwood Preparatory Academy sat on 40 acres outside the city, at the end of a private road lined with oak trees old enough to have opinions. The main building was red brick and white columns, the kind of architecture that announced money without needing to say another word. The first thing Amara Rivers did when she arrived was stand completely still. Just for a moment. Just long enough to listen. 47 sounds in the first 10 seconds. The crunch of expensive luggage wheels on cobblestone. Laughter that came easy, the kind that had never needed to earn itself. Doors opening, closing with the soft precision of things engineered to close that way. Engines idling nearby, not the kind her father's truck made. These were quieter. The quietness of machines that cost more than he made in 3 months. She heard all of it. Then she picked up her single duffel bag and walked through the front gate like she belonged there. Because she did. The looks started immediately. She felt them the way she always felt them, not with her eyes, but with the change in atmosphere that happened when attention landed on you. These looks were different from the usual kind. Not pitying, not uncomfortable. These were measuring, assessing, filing her into a category, and deciding what that meant before she'd taken 10 steps. She filed them back. She could tell a lot from footsteps. The student behind her moved with the loose confidence of someone who had never had to justify where they were going. Another student off to her left moved faster, heavier, impatient. A third stood near the entrance and didn't move at all, which meant watching. Probably both watching and waiting. That's the scholarship student, someone said, not quite far enough away. The blind one. A pause. Huh, said another voice. That single syllable held an entire opinion. Amara kept walking. Her room was on the second floor, east wing. She arrived before her roommate and stood in the doorway for 30 seconds without moving, learning the space by sound and air current. 2 windows, the right one brought in more traffic noise, so it faced the main road. Beds along opposite walls, desk on each side, bathroom through the left door, tile floors, the contained echo of a small space. She was halfway through unpacking when the door opened. Oh, hey, I'm Drea. Drea Walton. I was told I had a roommate, but they didn't tell me. A pause, a brief recalibration. I mean, they told me your name, but not. It's fine, Amara said. I'm Amara. Right. Yeah, sorry. Another pause different from the first one, not uncomfortable, just someone thinking. Do you want the window bed or the wall bed? Because I genuinely don't care either way. I sleep like a rock, regardless. Amara almost smiled. Wall bed. Perfect. Done. She heard Drea drop a bag heavy enough to suggest she'd packed for at least a year. First semester here? First semester anywhere. Same. Pre-law. Or pre-law, since technically this is still prep school. A beat. What about you? Literature, Amara said, and political theory. A short silence, not uncomfortable. Okay, Drea said. I like you already. She met Brennan Hayes at 6 in the morning on her second day. She had gotten up early because she always got up early. That had been true since she was 9, since she started training, since she learned that early mornings were quiet enough to actually hear things. She'd found the library through a combination of the campus map she'd memorized at home, and the way large open spaces changed air pressure differently from corridors. She was 2 steps inside when she heard it, typing, fast and specific and unbroken. It's the sound of someone who had been at it for hours and wasn't planning to stop. She found a chair across from the sound and sat down and took out her notes. 20 minutes passed. The typing stopped. You're not going to ask what I'm doing. A male voice, flat, not unfriendly. No, she said. Most people ask. You stop every 4 minutes and 12 seconds, runs what sounds like a test, then start again. The pattern of the keystrokes changed about an hour ago, which means you found what you were looking for and now you're building on it. She turned a page. Seemed rude to interrupt. Silent then. I'm Brennan. Amara. He went back to typing. She went back to her notes. It was, she would later think, one of the better introductions she'd ever had. She met Cole Ashford on Wednesday, not directly. Not yet. She was walking from her literature seminar to the dining hall, taking the long route past the courtyard because she's liked the way open spaces felt different, more air, more sky, sound spreading out instead of pressing in. She had just passed the building that housed the administrative offices when she heard it. Voices. Through a door that wasn't quite shut. She wasn't eavesdropping. She was just not pretending she couldn't hear. 3 days and she's already drawing attention. A man's voice, older. Careful with words the way lawyers were careful. Not to say less, but to make each word do exactly what was intended. That's not ideal. She's a student. Younger. Cooler, flat in a practiced way. She's a distraction, and distractions have a way of becoming complications. A pause with weight in it. The scholarship committee made an unusual choice. Those choices can always be revisited if the right questions are asked. Silence. Then the younger voice, very level, I'll handle it. Amara kept walking. Her cane tapped the cobblestone. Even, measured. She did not break stride. She counted steps of the building and turned right, kept going. Handle it. She turned those 2 words over, examined them from different angles, set them somewhere she could find them again. The dining hall at Crestwood was large enough that she could hear the whole shape of it before she stepped inside. High ceilings, at least 60 feet of floor space, the acoustic signature of a lot of bodies in a room too polished to absorb sound properly. She got her tray, navigated, found a spot near the window where she could put her back to the wall and hear the room without the room coming up behind her. She was 3 bites in when it happened. She heard it before it reached her, the slight sound of liquid moving faster than it should, the shift that came from something being tilted, and the half-second before impact. She moved her tray left, pulled her arm back, blocked the path. The coffee went onto the table. Not her. Not her clothes. A voice, immediate and theatrical. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." The room went quiet, not all of it, just the tables nearby. The quiet of 20 people recalibrating at once. The quiet of something failing to go the way it was planned. She reached for the napkins, cleaned the spill without commentary, did not look up, did not need to. But she'd heard the breathing nearby change. One person, standing just beyond arm's reach. Slow intake held a beat too long. The breathing of someone surprised and rethinking. She noted it and moved on. That evening she called her father. Not because she had planned to. She had planned to read and sleep early. But she was sitting on her bed, in the dark. She always kept the lights off, had for years. And the room was quiet, and Drea wasn't back yet, and the thing she'd been pressing down since the bus had started finding its way back up. Her father picked up on the second ring. "Hey, baby. Hey, Dad." A pause. He always gave her room. Never rushed to fill silence, which was rare in people and was something she had loved about him for as long as she could remember. "Talk to me," he said. She opened her mouth, closed it. Tried it again. "I don't know if I belong here." "In what sense?" he said. "In all of it. Everyone here has been preparing for this place their whole lives, and she stopped. I got here on a bus. Everyone else had cars. Not just any cars. Cars where the doors closed by themselves." James Rivers was quiet for a moment. "You know what the difference is between you and the kids whose doors close by themselves. Please don't say hard work." Eyes was going to say nothing. His voice was flat, not comforting. "Matter of fact, there is no difference. You are exactly as qualified to be there as any of them, more qualified than some." She pressed her lips together. "That's not how it feels," she said. "I know it's not." A silence, the comfortable kind, the kind they had gotten good at. "You'll figure it out," he said. "You always do." She almost said it then, almost. "What if this time I can't pull it back? What if this time I'm wrong about what I can handle?" She didn't. She said, "I know," said goodnight, put the phone down, and then she lay in the dark for a long time and let herself go back to the things she had been folding away since the bus. She was 9 years old, summer, hot in the way that made time slow down, everything feeling. She had her mother's hand, Michelle Rivers, who smelled like the soap she always used, and something underneath that was just her, just the specific warmth of her. She was laughing at something Amara had said. She laughed like that easily, her whole face involved. Nothing held back. There was an ice cream shop 2 storefronts down. Amara had pointed, had tugged, had said, "Please, Mom, please, just quickly, we have time." And Michelle had said yes. The things that happened after that came in order, always in the same order. The sound of the door, the cool air, the smell of sugar, the voice behind them that was wrong before she understood why it was wrong. The specific quality of wrong that the body knows before the mind does. The sound, the glass, the dark. She didn't remember pain exactly. She remembered her mother's arms around her, pulling her down and behind the counter, away from whatever was happening. She remembered the weight of those arms, how certain they were. No hesitation, no calculation, no pause. Just child first. Cost second. No question at all. She didn't remember anything after that for a long time. When she came back, her eyes didn't. Her mother didn't either. She had never told anyone that she was the one who wanted ice cream. Her father knew. He'd been told everything, had been in another state when it happened, had driven 11 hours to get to her bedside and sat there for 2 days without sleeping before she woke up. But he had not once in 10 years said anything that could be read as her fault. She had said it herself once, when she was 12, during a hard stretch, when grief and guilt had tangled into something she couldn't separate. She'd said it out loud to him and waited. He had been quiet for a long moment. Then, "You were 9 years old, Amara. You wanted ice cream. That is the whole of what you are responsible for." She had not cried then either, but she carried it. She had always carried it. The particular weight of knowing that her wanting something had set something in motion, and that motion had ended with, she folded it back down. It stayed folded long enough to sleep. Thursday morning, she mapped Cole Ashford. She didn't know his name yet. She knew his category, the younger voice from behind the door. The one who had said handle it with the flatness of someone who had been handling things for other people for a long time. She built his presence out of available data, footsteps that were unhurried and purposeful, fabric that moved well, the sound of good material, the confidence of someone who had never had reason to walk quickly because everything had always waited for him. She crossed him in the second-floor hallway at 7:15. He said nothing. She said nothing, but she felt his pause. Half a second longer than a passing stranger required. The pause of someone taking stock of something unexpected. She kept walking. She noted the weight distribution of his steps, slightly more on the left, consistent, something habitual. She noted the pace and the rhythm. She noted the way he breathed, which was controlled in the way that people were controlled, when they were paying attention to something they didn't want to show they were paying attention to. She spent the next 2 days collecting the rest. Friday afternoon, literature seminar. 12 students, oval table, the kind of class where opinions were expected and defending them was required. She had been doing exactly that, which apparently some people found surprising. The quality of someone's surprise, when you say something intelligent, is different from every other kind of surprise. Sharper. Briefly embarrassed, she felt it from 3 different directions during the discussion and said nothing about it. At the end of class, Professor Aldine assigned the week's group project. She ended up in a group of 5 by seating arrangement. They exchanged contact information. Made a plan to meet Sunday afternoon at 2 in the library. Sunday afternoon, she was there at 1:55. She sat at the agreed table and opened her notes and waited. At 2:15, she was still waiting. At 2:20, she called Drea. "Hey, did something happen with the time for the study group?" "What time?" Drea said. 2 o'clock. Main library. A pause that told her everything, Amara. "I saw those 3 in the east courtyard 20 minutes ago. Laptops out. A beat." "Okay," Amara said. She put the phone down, sat with it for a moment, felt the deliberateness of it, how much coordination it took to leave someone out this precisely. Not laziness, not forgetting. This was organized. She thought about standing up and going home. Then she thought about the door, the voice. Handle it. She took out her notes and spent the next hour building the entire project herself, from memory and from the reading she had already done twice. When class met Monday morning, and it was clear she was the only one with a complete analysis, she presented it without any commentary on what had happened. The room was quiet when she finished. "That was remarkable, Miss Rivers," Professor Aldine said. She nodded, said nothing else, sat down, and from somewhere across the room she felt the pause she had begun to associate it with one specific person, a recalculation, a reassessment, and underneath that for just a moment, something that felt like frustration meeting something it hadn't planned for. Good, she thought, let it. Coach Donna Briggs found her after PE on Friday of the second week. The class had been straightforward, exempted from dodgeball as usual. She had sat on the bench and tracked the game without effort. Cataloging the movement patterns of 23 people she was gradually coming to know by sound. Coach Briggs was old school in his methods and fair in his expectations, which was more than she'd gotten from some people. He waited until the other students had cleared out. She knew he was still there. She could hear him in the corner of the room, moving things in no particular order, the movement of someone waiting for the room to empty. She waited, too. When the last footsteps faded down the hallway, he walked over and sat on the bench a few feet away. Not close enough to feel like pressure, far enough to feel like he was giving her room to choose how to respond. "I'm going to say something," he said, "and I need you to understand it's coming from a place that isn't pity. I want to be clear about that first." "Okay," she said. "I know Cole Ashford." He said the name without building to it, which she respected. "I know how he operates. I've been at this school 6 years. In those 6 years, 3 students who were targeted by him have left, not because they wanted to. A pause. One of them left for health reasons. Serious ones, that I believe are connected, even though I can't prove it." She was very still. "I'm telling you this because I should have told us the others sooner." His voice was level, but carrying something heavy that had been in there a long time. "I waited. I kept thinking it would resolve itself. Because the Ashford family has relationships with this institution that make direct action complicated. And while I was waiting, he didn't finish. She understood what lived in that silence, the specific weight of inaction that has curdled over years into something that doesn't have a clean name. "Why are you telling me now?" she asked. "Because I've watched you for 2 weeks, and I think you're the first one who might not go the same way." A pause. "And because I already failed 3 people by keeping quiet, I'm not doing it again." She sat with that for a moment, turned it over. Not just what he'd said, the thing underneath it. The particular texture of guilt that had been carried so long it had worn itself smooth. "Thank you," she said, "for telling me. Don't thank me yet." He stood. "I wanted you to know you're not imagining it. Whatever's been happening, you're not imagining it." She heard him pick up his bag, walk toward the door. She sat still for a long time after he left. She had known, of course. She had known since the door that wasn't quite shut and the 2 words that followed, but knowing something and having confront were different in ways that took up different amounts of space. One was information, the other was weight. She breathed through it, the way Sensei Cross had taught her. In and out, feel it, then put it where you need it. Tuesday morning, someone moved a chair into her path between the dining hall and her first class. She heard the scrape of it, the displacement of a chair leg on tile, the particular sound of weight shifting to a new position, 3 steps before she reached it. She adjusted her route by half a step without changing her pace. Behind her, she heard breathing go slightly faster. The breathings of someone who had expected a different outcome. She kept walking. Wednesday afternoon, same dining hall. She was nearly to her usual table when she heard it again, liquid moving faster than it should, a container being tilted toward her from the left. She turned her tray slightly and the spill went wide of her, onto the empty seat instead of onto her clothes. She set her tray down. Tess began eating. She heard from somewhere nearby the sound of someone recalculating. She thought, this is a pattern. Patterns have limits. Someone who keeps repeating the same approach and getting no result is running out of ideas. Running out of ideas meant escalating. She needed to be ready for what escalation looked like. She considered telling Drea. She considered telling Brennan, who she knew well enough now to find in the library each morning, who communicated almost entirely in information and had turned out to be, in a quiet way, one of the more reliable people she'd come across. She decided to wait. She needed to understand the full shape of things first. Friday evening of the second week. The dining hall was half empty. She stayed late, finishing her reading, and was nearly back to her dorm when she heard the footsteps. She placed them in under a second. She had 2 weeks of data.
Ashford.
Walking toward her, alone, no one with him, no curated casualness, just him crossing the path at an angle that would bring him to her. She kept walking, didn't adjust her pace. They stopped a few feet apart. She waited. "You're impressive," he said. She kept walking. He fell into step beside her, not hurrying, just suddenly there. "I mean that. Most people would have filed a complaint by now." "I know," she said. "Then why haven't you?" She stopped, turned her head toward his voice in the way that had the effect of seeming to look directly at him, a trick she had learned at 12, had used 10,000 times since. "Because a complaint without evidence disappears," she said. "And your family has enough relationships at this school that even a complaint with evidence would need to be airtight before it went anywhere." A pause. Long enough to be readable. "So," she continued, "I'm waiting until I have something airtight." Silence. "That's rational," he said after a moment. "I know," she said, and she walked the rest of the way to her building without looking back. She didn't need to. She could hear exactly what his breathing was doing from 15 feet away, and it was telling her everything she needed to know. She called Drea from her room that night. "Tell me what you know about Cole Ashford." Drea was quiet for 1 second, too long. "What made you think I know anything specific?" Amara sat down at her, thought back through every interaction since the first day. The way Drea's breathing changed the first time Amara mentioned the name. The careful neutrality she maintained whenever it came up again. The specific quality of a silence that was protecting something. "Drea," she said, a longer pause. "I'll tell you," Drea said, "but not tonight. Tonight I can't." Underneath the words, something old. Not fresh, worn down by time, but not gone anywhere. "Okay," Amara said. "Thank you." A beat. "Amara." "Yeah, I was going to tell you eventually. I needed to know I could trust you first." Amara thought about that. That's fair, she said. I've been doing the same thing with you. She put the phone down, sat in the dark of her room and ran through everything, every sound, every pause, every pattern across 2 weeks. The coffee, the chair, the study group, the footsteps in the hallway. Handle it. Coach Briggs with his 6 years of watching. Cole aside her like a colleague discussing logistics, and Drea with something worn and old underneath whatever she was protecting. She did not sleep right away. She lay in the dark and thought about the shape of things, about what came next, about the fact that someone who said handle it and meant it would not stop chairs moved into paths and coffee each aimed at her clothes. She thought about her mother. She let herself, briefly, not the full memory, just the particular warmth of her. The way she laughed, then she folded it back. Not yet, she needed to stay clear. Saturday morning, 6:22. Brennan came through the library door at 6:17. She knew his walk well enough now to place it from the entrance without any effort. He crossed directly to her table, sat down, placed his laptop in front of him, typed for 40 seconds, then turned the speaker toward her and played an audio file. 3 seasons of sound, keystrokes, a specific click, then silence. That's your Stu's file being accessed, he said. Night before last. 2:14 in the morning. She was very still. There's a document in there now that wasn't there before. His voice carried no alarm. Just information, delivered in the flat, precise way he delivered everything. It looks like your application materials, but the academic records don't match yours. Better in some places, worse in others. Like someone averaged your real grades down to make them look inconsistent. She ran through implications immediately. Inconsistent academic record. If sent to the scholarship committee, it would raise questions. Questions would require review. Review would take time. Time during which she could be suspended, pending investigation. When does it send? She said. Monday morning. 7 a.m. automatic trigger. She checked the time on her phone by feel. The reader spoke quietly in her earpiece. 6:22. She did the calculation. From Saturday morning to Monday at 7, just 6 hour. Can you stop it? I can identify the source, Brennan said. Stopping it without triggering a secondary send is more complicated. If I pull the document directly, there's a backup. The file sends anyway, plus a flag to the academic office that looks like someone specifically, whoever has legitimate access to that file, tried to tamper with it. A beat of silence. Which would look like me, she said. Yes, she sat with it for a moment. Then we don't touch it. He waited. We document it instead. We build a record of what it is, where it came from, when it was placed, and who placed it. She turned toward him. Can you do that without accessing the document itself? 3 seconds of silence. Exactly 3, yes, he said. I can log everything passively. No access, no alteration, just observation. Then that's what we do, and we let it send. He was quiet for a moment, not uncertain, processing. You want them to think it worked, he said. I want them to keep moving, she said. People who think they're winning stop watching for what comes next. She picked up her phone and called Drea. It rang 3 times before Drea answered, her voice rough from sleep. It's 6 in the morning. I know, Amara said. I need you to come to the library, and I need you to tell me everything you know about Cole Ashford. A pause, brief then, more awake than she'd sound a second ago. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The call ended. Amara set the phone on the table, sat for a moment in the quiet of the library with the sound of Brennan beginning to type across from her. She felt the shape of what was ahead. Not clearly, she never saw things clearly in any sense. But the way she felt everything, by texture, by pressure, by the way the air in a room changed when something important was happen. She knew this particular quality of air. She knew it from the mat in the dark, with 2 people moving toward her and 40 seconds to work with. This was the moment before, and she had always been good at the moment before. Drea arrived at 6:31. Not 10 minutes. 9. Amara heard her coming from the end of the corridor. Fast footsteps, no hesitation, the cadence of someone who had made a decision before they got out of bed. She pushed through the library door and crossed the room without pausing and sat down across from Amara and Brennan, like she had been expecting this meeting for a while. Maybe she had. Okay, she said. Her voice was rough from sleep, but her words were clear. What do you know? Someone put a false document in my student file, Amara said. It sends to the scholarship committee Monday morning at 7. We have just under 60 hours. Drea looked at Brennan. Can you stop it? I can identify the source, Brennan said. Stopping it without triggering a secondary send is more complicated. If I pull the document directly, there's a backup trigger. The file sends is anyway, plus a flag to the academic office that looks like someone tampered with the record, which would look like Amara tampering with her own file, Drea said. Yes, a beat of silence. So we can't delete it, Drea said, not without making things worse. Amara had been listening to both of them without speaking. She was running the problem the way Sensei Cross had taught her to run a fight, not forward from where she stood, but backward from where she needed to end up. Then we don't delete it, she said. Both of them looked at her. We document everything instead. What the file is, where it came from, when it was placed, who placed it. She turned toward Bren. Can you log all of that without touching the document itself? He thought for exactly 3 seconds. She had learned to count his thinking silences. He said. Passive monitoring. No access, no alteration, just observation. Then that's what we do, and we let it send on Monday. Drea was quiet for a moment, working through it. You want them to think it worked, she said. I want them to keep moving, Amara said. People who believe they're winning, stop watching what's next. Drea exhaled through her nose, the sound of someone reassessing. Okay, she said. Then, but Amara, I need to tell you something first. She stopped, started again. I should have told you already. I've been trying to figure out how. Tell me now, Amara said. What Drea told her took 11 minutes. She told it in order. She didn't editorialize. She didn't reach for sympathy. She told it the way you told something you'd been carrying a long time, carefully because you had learned to be careful with it. But without softening the parts that were hard. 2 years ago, her sister, Kezia Walton, pre-med, full scholarship, second year at a different school with board overlap connected to Crestwood. She had crossed someone in the Ashford orbit. Not Cole directly, someone adjacent, moving in the same circles, using the same methods. Social pressure first, then academic targeting, then a document problem. They raised the institution didn't bother to look closely because the questions came from the right kind of family. Kezia's scholarship was revoked. She appealed. The appeal went nowhere. She wasn't in medicine now. She was fine, Drea said. She said it carefully. The way you said fine, wine, when you meant alive and managing. When you meant the person had put the pieces back, but the shape was different from before. She wasn't where she was supposed to be. I came here because I thought I could find something, Drea said. Evidence, maybe. Or just to understand how it kept working. How they kept doing it and nothing ever happened. She paused. And then you showed up, and I could see from the first week that they were going to try it on you. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Amara asked. Because I didn't know if you'd believe me. She stopped. And because I needed to know if you could trust me, Amara said. If I could trust myself, Drea said. To not make this about Kezia when it needed to be about you. Amara sat with that for a moment. Not just the information, but the thing underneath it. The fact that Drea had been carrying this alone for months. Had watched and waited, had not turned her sister's pain into a reason as to make herself useful before she was sure she could do it right. Is she okay? Amara asked. Your sister, a pause. She's getting there, Drea said. Good. Amara nodded once. Then let's make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. They worked through Saturday. Brennan built the passive monitoring script and explained it to Amara in plain terms. 6 lines of code. Invisible to whoever had placed the document, watching for any activity on the file and recording the device name, the timestamp, and the duration of each access. It wouldn't touch anything. It would just watch. By Saturday evening, they had their first confirmation. The file had been opened twice since it was planted. Once at 2:14 the night it appeared, probably whoever placed it, checking their work. Once on Friday afternoon at 4:56 from a device with a registered user. Brennan read the name once, carefully. Elliot Ashford. Not Cole, Amara said nothing. She filed it where she kept things that would matter later. Keep watching, she said. Brennan kept watching. Sunday morning, she took the bus to the dojo. 40 minutes each direction and worth every minute. The dojo smelled the same as it always had. She had been breathing that particular combinations of clean sweat and old wood for 10 years, and it had never once failed to settle something in her. Like her body recognized the place as a location where honest things happened and adjusted itself accordingly. Sensei Cross was waiting when she arrived, which meant he had known she was coming even though she hadn't called. He had a way of that. She stopped trying to understand it years ago. "You're early," he said. "I needed the mat," she said. He nodded, pointed toward the changing room without another word. She changed, tied her belt, came back out. He was standing at the edge of the mat with someone she didn't know. Female she could tell from the weight and placement of the footsteps, the breathing pattern, the way the person held herself in space. Taller than Amara, heavier, moving with the specific stillness of someone who had learned how to wait. "This is Rena," Sensei Cross said. "She trains here Sundays. You're sparring today." Amara bowed to Rena. Rena bowed back. No other preamble. They took their positions and Rena moved first. Amara lost the first round in 40 seconds. Not close. Not technical. She read the opening wrong, anticipated a right lead and got a left, and by the time she recalibrated, she was already going down. She hit the mat and lay there, and the ceiling of the dojo was the same ceiling she had stared at for 10 years, and it looked exactly the same as it always did when she was on her back. 5 seconds. In those 5 seconds, she was 9 years old, and the world was dark, and she didn't know how to find the wolves. And then she heard her mother's voice, not a real voice, not anything external, just memory, doing what memory sometimes did, arranging something to the specific clarity of a person who had loved you completely. They had been in a public pool. Amara was 7. She kept stopping in the shallow end because she wanted to see the bottom before she moved forward, and Michelle Rivers had crouched down beside her and said, "Baby, you don't need to see the bottom. You just need to trust what your feet are telling you." Amara got up, shook her arms out, reset her stance. Round 2 lasted 4 minutes. Rena was the best opponent Amara had faced outside of competition. Faster than expected, unpredictable in her decisions, with a way of creating openings that felt completely real until they weren't. 3 times in this first minute, Amara nearly committed, caught herself, let the false opening close without taking it. She stopped trying to predict. She started listening instead. Not to the sound of movement, she always listened to that. Deeper than that, to the pattern underneath the movement. The slight change in Sbia's breathing that came 2 beats before she committed to something. The shift in weight distribution that told you what her body was about to ask itself to do. It was the same thing she did in every room she walked into. Same scene she had been told for 2 weeks. At 4 minutes and change, Rena overextended on a sweep attempt. Amara felt it coming 3 beats early. Stepped outside the arc of it, used the momentum that Rena had already committed, and brought her down to the mat with her arms secured. Rena tapped. Amara released. He stepped back. They bowed to each other. She heard Sensei cross the mat from his corner. "Sir," he stood beside her. "What changed?" He said. I stopped asking which box now she was going to do," Amara said. "I started asking how she decided." A pause. "There's a difference," he said. "Yes. And outside this room?" He waited. Same principle. She thought about 60 hours becoming 40 and counting. About the monitoring script, watching a file she had not touched. About Elliot Ashford's name attached to a Friday afternoon timestamp. Same principle, she said. She was back at Crestwood by early afternoon. Brennan had 2 updates. The file had been opened again Saturday evening. Same device, same registered user. 18 minutes this time, long enough to make changes, or long enough to read carefully. Either way, Elliot Ashford had been in her file for 18 minutes on Saturday evening. The second update was about Cole. "He was in the East Common Room last night," Brennan said, "with 2 people from the board's Student Liaison Committee. Drea was there." Drea leaned forward. "He was asking about the process for reviewing scholarship eligibility after admission. Specifically, what the committee's options were if academic inconsistencies were flagged." Amara was quiet for a moment. "He's building the environment," she said. "So when the file sends Monday, the people receiving it are already thinking in terms of review." "He's good at this," Drea said. It wasn't admiration. It was the exhausted recognition of a pattern she had seen destroy someone she loved. "He's had practice," Amara said. Monday, the file sent at 7 a.m., exactly as scheduled. By 9, Amara had received a message from the academic office asking her to schedule a meeting to discuss her scholarship documentation. The language was careful, neutral, the kind of language designed to sound procedural while meaning something else entirely. She scheduled the meeting for Thursday, bought herself time. She spent Monday afternoon in the library with Brennan, going through everything the monitoring script had collected so far. The access log was clean, detailed, building into a picture that was becoming harder to look away from. Elliot Ashford's device, repeated and purposeful. The timing of each access relative to the events of the past 2 weeks. It's not complete yet, Bren said. I have who's been reading the file. I don't have who planted it. Can you get that? I need to find the original write timestamp and match it to a device. The file's metadata has been partially scrubbed, but not completely. He paused. I need about an hour with the right kind of access. What kind of access do you have? Currently, standard student access. Another pause. There are guest accounts that students can create for project collaboration. Limited scope, but I know exactly what I'm looking for. Limited scope might be enough. How long would it take to find if you had the account? Less than an hour. Then we wait until we're ready to use what you find, she said. Not before. I don't want them to know we have it until it's too late to respond. He nodded, went back to typing. Tuesday came with weight she hadn't expected. She knew something was wrong before she reached the main hall. The building sounded different, the particular texture of a space where something had shifted, whispers moving faster than usual. Footsteps with more purpose, doors opening and closing with the specific energy of people seeking privacy. She had learned to read rooms through sound, the way other people read them through expression. And this room was telling her something had happened. Drea caught her at the top of the stairs. My scholarship got flagged, she said, quiet, controlled, but underneath it something that wasn't either of those things. Anonymous report, plagiarism on my entrance essay. Amara stopped. That's not true, Drea said. That essay was entirely mine. I can prove it. But proving it takes time, Amara said. The academic office wants to meet Thursday. Drea exhaled. 2 days of this and I can't call Kezia with this. I can't put this on her. Amara put a hand on her arm. Don't call her yet. There's nothing to tell her yet. How are you this calm? Drea's voice broke once, just slightly. How do you do that? I learned to be calm in small spaces, Amara said. And then I learned the small space is wherever you need it to be. A silence. That's actually helpful, Devria said. I kind of hate that it's helpful. Brennan got called to the IT office Wednesday afternoon. He texted her. She had a text-to-speech setup that read messages through an earpiece, quiet enough that only she could hear. And the message was brief in his way. IT meeting. Access log review. I'm back by 4. He was back by 4, sat down across from her in the library. They found an earlier log pull from when I was first tracing the planted document, he said. I was careful, but not careful enough. The pull itself was legitimate. Everything I accessed was available under my student account, but the way I accessed it looked systematic. Which it was, she said, which it was, a pause. They can't suspend me for accessing things I'm entitled to access, but they can restrict future access. Before we have what we need. Possibly. She thought through it. Did you pull everything the monitoring script has collected so far? This morning, he said, when I got the meeting notification. Of course he had. You still need the original write record, he said. Who planted the file? From what device? Everything I have now shows who's been reading it, not who put it there. Can you still get it with restricted access? The guest account option is still available, he said. That wouldn't be affected by student account restrictions. It's a separate system. Then we wait until the moment is right, she said. Not yet. He nodded, opened his laptop and began typing. Wednesday evening. She was crossing the east courtyard on her way back from the library, the long way. She always took the long way through the courtyard because the open space felt different after hours indoors, the air pressure changing, the sound spreading when she heard the footsteps. She placed them in under a second. She had 3 weeks of data, Cole Ashford, walking toward her. No group, no audience, no manufactured ease. Just him crossing the courtyard at an angle that would bring him to where she was. She kept her pace. They stopped near the center of the courtyard. The space was empty this hour, the light going gray, the temperature dropping toward evening in the specific way it did in late October, when the day gave up before you were quite ready for it. He stopped. She stopped. She let the silence be what it was. She had learned long ago that most people couldn't stand silence, that the person who needed to fill it would eventually fill it with something true. She waited. I'm not going to apologize, he said. I didn't ask you to. I know. A pause. I wanted to be clear about it anyway. She waited again. I needed you to understand something. His voice was different. Not the version she heard in groups, the easy, unhurried version. This was quieter, more careful. I'm not doing this because I have something against you. I know, she said. That landed differently than he expected. She heard the brief shift in his breathing. Then you understand this isn't personal. Everything is personal, she said. The fact that he told me isn't personal. What you're doing to me is. A longer pause. My father then stopped. She waited. My father needs me to win, he said. He stopped again. She heard something underneath his breathing she had not heard before. Not the controlled cadence of someone performing confidence. Something beneath the performance. Raw enough to be unintended. I don't know how to do anything other than what he taught me to do. She thought about 9 years old, about wanting things, about the weight of being shaped toward a single outcome for so long that the shape became the person, and the person forgot there was ever anything else. She didn't say any of that. That's the most honest thing you've said to me, she said instead. It doesn't change anything, he said. No, she agreed. It doesn't. He stood there a moment longer. She felt him reaching for something else and then deciding against it. Then his footsteps turned and moved away, unhurried, back the way he'd come. She stood in the courtyard after he left. She understood the mechanism now. Not the choices, not what he had done and continued to do, but the engine underneath. The person who had been aimed at a single target for so long that aiming had become identity. Understanding was not forgiving, but it was useful. She knew what she was dealing with. And knowing what you were dealing with was most of the work. Thursday arrived with Coach Briggs gone. She found out from Drea, who had heard it from another student in the East Hall. Coach Briggs received a formal suspension notice that morning, pending review of an anonymous parent complaint. The complaint alleged favoritism toward specific students in violation of equal treatment policy. Drea recited this in a voice that was working very hard at neutral. Which students, Amara said. It doesn't specify, but the timing is not a coincidence, Amara said. She found his address through the campus directory. He lived off campus, 7 by bus. She went that evening, knocked, waited. He opened the door in civilian clothes, which made him seem slightly different from how he seemed in the gymnasium. Not smaller, just different. People were always different outside the context that usually framed them. Amara, he said. He sounded tired in the way that came from something more than a single day. Can I come in? He stepped back. She came in, found a chair, sat. He sat across from her and didn't say anything for a moment. She heard the particular silence of a person who had been waiting for something and was not yet sure whether what had arrived was it. They moved fast, he said finally. They knew you'd be the first call I'd make if things escalated, she said. So they made sure you weren't available. I should have seen it coming. You've been watching this family for 6 years, she said. You know how they operate. But they're not being subtle anymore. No, he agreed. Because something changed, she said. Their targets are usually isolated before it gets to this stage. They haven't been able to isolate me, so they're moving faster than usual. She paused, which means they're not as controlled as they want to appear. He was quiet for a moment. You're very calm about this, he said. I'm not calm, she said. I just don't carry it on my face. Something in the room shifted, not tension releasing, something else. The recognition that happens between two people who have both learned to hold weight without showing where they're holding it. What do you need from me, he said. A written account, she said. Everything you've observed in 6 years, the 3 students. The dates, the specifics you remember, the things you were told to overlook. That could make things worse for me. Yes, she said, it could. I won't tell you otherwise. He sat with it. She didn't push. She had learned that some decisions needed their full weight before a parent could carry them forward. All right, he said. She heard him move to a desk across the room. A drawer. Paper. I've actually been writing some of it down, he said quietly. For a while. In case. She nodded. She was not surprised. In case what? She said. In case someone finally gave me a reason to use it. She left his house an hour later with everything he had been keeping. She walked it back to the bus stop in the dark. Late October air with the particular bite of a season that had made up its mind. She walked with her hands in her pockets, and her mind moved through everything at once. They had Brennan's monitoring log, showing Elliot Ashford's repeated access to the planted file. Coach Briggs' 6 years of observed incidents and administrative suppression. Drea's documented account of what happened to Kezia, the passive script still running. They needed the original write record. Who planted the file? The complete chain. She was nearly to the bus stop when she heard them. 3 people. moving from the shadow of the parking lot's north side, which she had noted on her second day at Crestwood as poorly lit, and outside the coverage of the security cameras. She had spent a week quietly mapping. She had filed it as the kind of thing worth knowing. She had not known yet why. Now she did. They weren't being quiet in any skilled way. 3 people attempting sing silence made a particular kind of noise, the effortful noise of people who were not accustomed to needing to be careful. She stopped walking. Let them come to her. They spread out as they approached. 2 moving wide, 1 staying center. Someone had thought about this. It had not been spontaneous. The center one spoke, voice artificially lowered. "Give us your bag." She stood still. "Phone 2, said a voice to her left. She heard 3 separate breathing patterns, 3 different weights on the pavement. The one on her right was nervous, too fast, too shallow, a person who had agreed to something and was now finding it was not what they had imagined. The center one rehearsed. She could tell from the cadence, from the prepared phrasing that came out like a line delivered from memory. The one on her left was the most controlled of the 3. Controlled meant dangerous. She ran the geometry. No, the center one moved first. The seats always moved first when they had rehearsed. She stepped left into the space he had just left, not away from him but directly into his trajectory, and caught his arm at the wrist and used the momentum he had already committed. You could not stop committed momentum, only redirect it, and brought down to the pavement in one controlled movement. He hit it with the specific sound of someone who had not known they were falling until they already had. The left one was faster than she had accounted for. He grabbed at her shoulder. She let the grab land, turned into it instead of away from it, which was the thing that never made sense until it worked. And his grip became her lever, and 4 seconds later he was on the pavement beside his friend. The right one didn't move. She turned toward him, said nothing. She heard his breathing, fast now and losing any pretense of control. "I'm going to call someone to collect those 2, she said. "You should leave before that happens." He left. She stood in the parking lot. Her pulse was up. She was honest enough with herself to know that, not from the fight. From what came after fights, the part where you stood in the quiet and felt the full weight of how close the things could have been. She reached into her jacket for her phone and stopped. A smell faint. They had been outside long enough for the night air to work on it. But still there, a specific cologne. Expensive, the kind that announced itself even when it was trying not to. She had smelled this before. She had cataloged it without knowing yet why it admired her. The way she cataloged everything, in the corridor outside the administrative offices over the past 3 weeks. Not Cole, someone who moved in Elliot Ashford's orbit. She filed it exactly where it belonged. Then she called her father. Jesus Rivers arrived in 48 minutes. She heard his truck from the end of the street. She heard him get out and cross the lot toward her, and she heard him stop when he reached her. And she knew he was assessing her the way he always had, quickly, completely, looking for the things she might not tell him. "I'm fine," she said. "I can see that," he said, which was his version of relief. "Are they?" "Sitting over there," she said, mostly embarrassed. He stood beside her for a moment with the specific quality of presence she had known since she was 9. The way he occupied space like he had decided to be exactly where he was and had no intention of being anywhere else. "Amara," he said. "I know," she said. "This isn't the boy anymore. It's his father," she said. He was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that was working through something. "Tell me," he said. She told him the shape of it. Not every detail, the shape. The file, Briggs Drea, the monitoring log, the cologne she had just placed. When she finished, James Rivers stood in the dark for a long moment. "You need to end this," he said. "Soon. I know. And you need something they can't dismiss." "I know that too." A pause that carried something in it. Something that had been in him a long time, looking for the right moment to surface. "I wasn't there," he said. "When your mother," he stopped, started differently. "I've been trying to be there every time since. I know I'm not always in time." "You're here now," she said. He put his hand on her shoulder once, then stepped back. "Tell me what you need," he said. "One more piece," she said. "Who placed the file, the full chain? And somewhere public use Udis, somewhere Elliot Ashford can't shut down without making it worse for himself." "When will you have the first part?" She thought about Brennan. "The guest account?" "1 hour." "Tomorrow," she said. "I need 1 more day." "Friday morning." 6:47. Brennan was already in the library. He had been there since before 6. She could tell from the quality of his typing, the pace of someone who had been at something for a while and had found their rhythm. She sat across from him. "Did you get it?" she said. "Last night," he said. "Guest account, 11-minute window." He paused in the way that meant he was deciding how to deliver what he had. "The file was written to your record on a Thursday night. 2:14 in the morning. The session was authenticated through a credential assigned to one user. She already knew, but she needed to hear him say it. "Elliot Ashford," she said. "Yes," Brennan said. The library was very quiet around them, so it was complete. Not Cole managing the situation his father had handed him. Elliot Ashford placing the file himself. Elliot Ashford returning to monitor it repeatedly. Elliot Ashford sending people to a parking lot when everything else had failed to move her. She thought about Cole in the courtyard, Wednesday evening. "I don't know how to do anything other than what he taught me to do." She was beginning to understand that was more precise than she had taken it to be. "Brennan," she said, "yes. Secure everything, every log, every timestamp, off the school system entirely." "Done last night," he said. She sat back. She thought about Sensei Axros on the mat Sunday. What changed? I stopped asking what she was going to do. I started asking how she decided. She knew how Elliot Ashford decided. She had known since the door that wasn't quite shut. He decided by removing obstacles. Quietly, methodically, using tools that left no visible marks. The only way to counter that was to make the marks visible in a room he could not control before he understood what was happening. She thought about the school calendar. The events large enough to bring everyone together, board members, faculty, alumni, local press. Events where Elliot Ashford would be present and expecting a pleasant evening. She pulled out her phone and found the date she had been thinking about since Tuesday. The Crestwood Annual Recognition Ceremony. 3 weeks. "I need 3 weeks," she said. "And I need Coach Briggs to still have his alumni account active." Brennan typed something, paused. "Alumni account stay active for life unless manually revoked. His is active." She nodded slowly. "Then we have what we need," she said. Not to Brennan, not to anyone in particular. Just to the shape of what was coming, which she could feel now the way she felt everything. By texture, by pressure, by the change in the air when something that had been building finally found its direction. She had always been good at knowing when the moment before was over. This was it. 3 weeks is a long time when you know what's coming. It is also no time at all. Amara spent 3 weeks the way she spent everything, methodically, without announcing what she was doing to anyone who didn't need to know. She went to class. She kept her grades exactly where they had always been. She nodded to Cole Ashford in the hallway when they passed, and gave him nothing to read in the nod, which she could tell bothered him in the specific way that calm bothered people who were waiting for a reaction. She went to the dojo on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She sparred with Rana twice more and lost once and won once, and learned something different from each. She called her father on Sundays, and in the spaces between all of that, she built. The first thing she built was the evidence package. Brennan had everything archived. What she needed was to organize it into something a room full of people with varying level of technical literacy could understand in under 5 minutes. Because that was what she would have. One opportunity, one room, somewhere between 3 and 7 minutes before Elliot Ashford recovered enough to begin shutting things down. She and Brennan worked on it for 4 evenings across the first week. He translated the raw data into something visual, timestamps rendered as a clean timeline, device registrations shown as a chain, the planted document placed beside her actual academic record, in a format that made the discrepancies obvious even to someone who had never looked at a student file. He described everything to her in detail until she could see it without seeing it, until she could have explained each element to a stranger without hesitation. "Can you make it large enough for the main auditorium screen?" she asked one evening. "The presentation system in the auditorium is uploaded in advance," he said. "Files go through the faculty portal. Students don't have access to the faculty portal. But alumni do," she said. "Alumni with active accounts can upload presentation materials for the recognition ceremony. I confirmed it in the event documentation." A pause, she heard him thinking. "You know an alumnus with an active account," he said. "I might," she said. She went back to Coach Briggs on a Wednesday evening, 10 days before the ceremony. He was at his kitchen table when she arrived. She heard the particular quality of someone who had been sitting in the same place for a while, not moving, not reading, just sitting with their thoughts and letting them move. He had been expecting her, or expecting something. People who had made a decision sat differently from people who hadn't, and Coach Briggs had the soundness of someone who had already decided. She sat across from him and laid out what she had. Not technical details, the shape of it, the planted file. Elliot Ashford's name on the access log, the parking lot, the cologne she had traced back to someone who moved in Elliot's orbit. Coach Briggs's own 6 years of documentation sitting in the drawer he had opened for her. He was quiet through all of it. When she finished, he said, "What do you need from me?" "Your alumni account," she said. "Upload access to the presentation system. I need to load a file and set it to trigger at a specific time during the ceremony, after Elliot Ashford begins speaking, before the board has time to understand what's happening." He was quiet for a long moment. "If this goes wrong," he said, "it comes back to me." "Yes," she said, "it does. I won't tell you otherwise. And if it goes right?" "The people in that room see what has been happening," she said. "Not a complaint filed in an office that gets buried. Not a report that goes to a committee Elliot Ashford has spent years building relationships with. They see it in public, with the board present, with alumni present, with the press that covers the ceremony. The school paper covers it," he said, "and usually someone from the local paper, sometimes a photographer." "That's enough," she said. He sat with it. She did not push. She had learned that some decisions needed room to breathe before a person could commit to carrying them. "All right," he said. She stand and crossed to the other room. "Come back with his laptop. Walk me through what you need," he said. Dria's academic review happened on the Thursday of the second week. Amara went with her, sat in the chair beside her in the academic office, and said nothing during the meeting itself, because Dria didn't need her to speak. Dria had her original jabble drafts, her research notes, the timestamp metadata on her document files, showing a writing process that had developed across 3 weeks before submission. The academic officer looked uncomfortable from the beginning. The anonymous complaint was thin, she admitted after reviewing Dria's materials. The evidence of plagiarism was not substantive. The flag was removed. They walked out into the hallway and stood there for a moment without speaking. "That's it?" Dria said. The voice of someone who had braced for a longer fight and found the room already empty. "For now," Amara said. "It shouldn't have happened at all." "No," Amara said. "It shouldn't have." They walked back across campus in the late afternoon. The light was doing something with the oak trees that Amara could feel on the left side of her face, the warmth of it at a low angle, the particular warmth of late autumn that peoples who could see it always tried to describe and never quite managed to. "What happens after the ceremony?" Dria asked. "That depends on what the board does," Amara said, "and what Elliot Ashford's lawyer does, what the people in that room decide to do with what they've seen." "You're betting on people," Dria said. "I'm betting on what people do when something is put in front of them clearly enough that looking away requires a deliberate choice," Amara said. "Some of them will look away, but not all of them." Dria walked beside her quietly for a moment. "My sister could be there when it mattered," she said. "I want to be there for you." "You already are," Amara said. The night before the ceremony, Amara could not sleep. This was not unusual before something large. She had learned not to fight it. She lay in the dark and let the wakefulness be what it was instead of turning it into a problem. Drea was asleep on the other side of the room. She could hear the slow, easy rhythm of it, the breathing of someone who had put her trust in tomorrow and let herself rest. Amara lay still and thought about her mother. She did not push a sit-down this time. She let it come. Michelle Rivers had been 34 years old when she died. Amara had been doing the math on that for 10 years. The way you did math that didn't lead anywhere useful, but you did it anyway, because it was one of the ways you kept the shape of someone present. Next year, Amara would be 20. At 34, she would be 15 years older than she was right now, and her mother would still be 34. The arithmetic never resolved. It just kept going. She thought about the ice cream shop. She had thought about it so many times across so many years that she had worn grooves in the memory, the pull of her hand, the cool air, the door. And underneath all of it for 10 years, the same question in the same voice, always her own. If she hadn't wanted ice cream, if she had just walked past, if she had been easier, smalser, someone who didn't need things that required a detour. She lay in the dark and let herself ask it one more time, and then she thought about 5 seconds on a mat with the ceiling above her. About what came in those 5 seconds when he stopped fighting them and started listening. Her mother's voice arranging itself out of memory into something clear. Baby, you don't need to see the bottom. You just need to trust what your feet are telling you. Her mother had not died because Amara wanted ice cream. Her mother had died because a man with a gun made a choice. She had known this for years, known it with the part of her that processed facts and filed them correctly. But there was a different kind of knowing, the kind that lived in the body, the kind that released things you had been holding without realizing how long or how tightly. And that kind came on its own schedule and could not be argued into arriving. She felt it arrive now, not in a wave, not dramatically, just a shift quiet and certain, the way a key turned in a lock that had been stuck a long time, something that had been held in one position for 10 years, moving into a different one. She pressed her hand flat to her sternum, breathed in, breathed out. She did not cry. She had not cried about this in a long time, and she did not now. But she lay there and felt the shift settle, and when it settled, there was something underneath it that felt, for the first time in 10 years, like solid ground beneath her feet. She slept. The recognition ceremony was held in the main auditorium. She had memorized it during a regular assembly 3 weeks earlier, had stayed after it emptied, and spent 20 minutes walking the perimeter, learning the acoustic signature, identifying the exits, understanding the distance from the stage to the third row on the left, and from the third row on the left to every other point in the room that might matter. She arrived early, sat in the third row on the left. Drea sat beside her. Brennan sat on the aisle. She wore dark slacks, a simple top, her black belt at her waist where she always wore it for formal occasions, not as a display. Sensei Cross had started the habit years ago and explained it once. You carry it so you remember what it cost. She had never stopped. The room filled around her. She heard the board members arrive. She had been building their acoustic profiles for weeks, their footsteps and voice patterns, and the specific way each of them moved through a space. She heard the faculty, the alumni, the particular energy of a room full of people who expected the evening to be pleasant. She heard Elliot Ashford. She would know his walk anywhere now. The walk of a man who had moved through rooms expecting them to accommodate him for so long that the expectation had become unconscious. He took his position near the stage, without hurrying, without looking around, with the ease of someone arriving at a place that had always been his. Cole was somewhere in the back right. She placed him from his breathing before she placed him from his footsteps. He was sitting still, not talking to anyone, not moving. She let her attention rest on the room as a whole and waited. The ceremony began. The interim director gave opening remarks, then student achievement presentations, 6 of them, varying lengths. Then 3 alumni speakers. She sat through all of it, with her hands folded in her baba and her attention moving across the room like water, touching everything lightly, leaving nothing unchecked. Brennan's laptop was in his bag. He did not open it. Everything was already done. The file was uploaded. The timer was set for 8:23, which was the scheduled start of Elliot Ashford's keynote address. The title he used every year, which she had looked up in 3 years of archived ceremony programs. The Foundation of Excellence, What We Owe Each Other. She had thought about that title for a long time. At 8:17, Elliot Ashford walked to the stage to the kind of applause that had been trained into a room rather than felt by it. She heard him set his notes on the podium, heard my microphone adjust, heard the particular quality of a man settling into a space he considered his. Good evening, he said. The room quieted. Crestwood has meant many things to many people over the decades of its existence, he began. Measured, deliberate. The voice of a man who chose his words the way he chose everything else, for maximum effect at minimum visible cost. But at its core, this institution has always stood for one thing above all others: integrity. She heard a few people shift in their seats. Academic integrity. Personally, the integrity of a community that holds itself up to a standard. The presentation screen changed. She could not see it. She did not need to. She heard it in the room. The shift in collective silence when something unexpected happens has a texture that is different from every other kind of silence. A brief held breath across 50 people simultaneously. The sound of a room recalibrating. Then a murmur. Then the murmur growing legs. Elliot Ashford stopped speaking mid-sentence. She heard him turn, heard the change in his breathing, the first crack in the composed surface, the first moment of encountering something he had not prepared a response to. It lasted less than 2 seconds before the composure came back, but 2 seconds was enough. She had been listening for it. She knew what was on the screen, because Brent Bond had described it to her until she could see it without seeing it. A clean white background, a horizontal timeline. Points marked with dates and times and device names. The planted document in one column, her real academic record beside it. The differences between them clear enough that anyone who had ever read a document in their life could understand what they meant. And at the bottom, in plain, unadorned text, device registered to Crestwood Administrative Network, session authenticated by account, last modified at the request of Board Member E. Ashford. No technical language, no jargon. Designed to be understood in under a minute by a room full of people who were not expecting to need to understand anything tonight. The murmur was becoming something with more weight behind it. Elliot Ashford recovered faster than she had hoped and slower than she had feared. This is, he paused, reaching for control he'd had 30 seconds ago. This is clearly a fabrication, a woman's voice from the back of the room, not young, carrying the weight of someone who had been in institutions long enough to know exactly when to say things no one else had said yet. A silence. This material has been manipulated, Elliot Ashford said, louder now, the controlled quality beginning to show its seams. I don't know who is responsible for this presentation, but I can assure the board and our guests that whatever it purports to show, Amara stood up. She did not announce it. She simply stood, in the third row on the left, and she heard the room shift in response, the specific acoustic of a large group of people reorienting their attention toward a new point in the space. No cane, no glasses. She had memorized this room, and she walked it the way she walked the mat, by knowing where everything was, by trusting what she knew, by moving as though it was exactly where she had learned it to be, because it was. She climbed the stage steps, crossed to the podium. Elliot Ashford did not move away. She had not expected him to. He was not a man who moved away from things, but she heard his breathing close, and in it she heard something she had not heard from him before. Uncertainty. Real uncertainty, not performed. The kind that came from encountering something you had not included in your calculations. She faced the room. She had not written a speech. She had thought about it, had decided against it. The things she needed to say were things she knew, and when you knew something, you did not read it from a page. She found the microphone by sound, adjusted it. "My name is Amara Rivers," she said. "I'm a first-year student at Crestwood. I came here on an academic scholarship. I took the bus." She let that sit for a moment. "I've been here 9 weeks," she said. "In those 9 weeks, someone put a false document in my student file designed to raise questions about my academic record. Someone arranged a series of incidents intended to make it difficult for me to stay. Someone sent 3 people to a parking lot at night to frighten me into leaving." A sound moved through the room. Not quite a murmur. Something more unsettled than that. "I'm not going to walk through all of it tonight," she said. "That's what the evidence on the screen is for. Every timestamp on it is authenticated. Every device registration is on record. I didn't fabricate it, and neither did the people who helped me document it." She paused. "I'm going to tell you something else instead." The room was very still. "When I was 9 years old, I lost my sight," she said, "and I lost my mother, both at once. A man made a choice, and my mother made a choice in response to his, and I spent the next years trying to figure out what I owed the world in exchange for surviving that." She heard, from somewhere in the room, the quiet sound of someone crying. She didn't know who, it didn't matter. "Decided I owed it smallsnid," she said. That's what you decide when you're 9 years old and the world teaches you that you're wanting something caused something terrible. You decide to stop wanting, to take up less space, to not need things that required a detour. She let that breathe. "My father taught me differently. A man named Alfred Cross taught me differently. And 10 years of learning to move through darkness taught me something that people who have always been able to see sometimes miss. That you don't need to see a thing to know it's there. You don't need to see the bottom of the pool. You just need to trust what your feet are telling you." She took a breath. "What my feet have been telling me for 9 weeks is that something is wrong here. Not wrong in a vague way. Wrong in a specific, documented, repeated way that has happened before, to students who came here before me, who didn't have what I had. People willing to put their names on the record. People who had been watching longer than I have. She paused. What you do with what's on that screen is your choice. You're the board. You're the alumni. You're the faculty who saw things across the years and had to decide each time whether to say something or stay quiet. She let the silence work for a moment. I'm not asking you to agree with me, she said. I'm asking you to look. She stepped back from the microphone. The room held its silence for a full 3 seconds. Then someone began to clap from the far left, a single person, steady and deliberate. Then another. Then, several at once, spreading through the room in the way that things spread when they have been waiting for a place to go. Elliot Ashford moved first. This is an unprecedented podium, Elliot. The woman from the back of the room. Same voice, same weight, unhurried. He stopped. Sit down, she said. It was not a loud voice. It had no need to be loud. It carried the authority of someone who had been in rooms like this for decades and had learned that the quieter you said a thing, the more space it took up. A long moment. She heard Elliot Ashford's breathing, heard the calculation happening behind it, heard him arrive at the conclusion that the room had turned in a direction that could not be reversed tonight. She heard him step away from the podium, heard him descend the stage steps, heard his footsteps cross the auditorium floor, heard the door. Then she heard Cole. His footsteps crossed the room in a direction she had not anticipated, not toward the exit, not toward her, but toward the board table that had been set along the left side of the auditorium for the ceremony. She heard him place something on the surface. Papers, a stack of it, set down with a specific deliberateness of someone who has thought carefully about this moment and is now doing the thing they decided to do. Then his footsteps turned toward the exit. He passed her row. She felt him pause. Just a moment. The pause of someone who has something to say and has decided that what they have already done says it better than words would. Then he was gone. She stood on the stage for a moment, in the noise of the room rearranging itself around what had just happened. Board members leaning toward each other. Faculty moving through the space. The woman from the back of the room walking toward the stage, with the purposeful stride of someone who knew what came next. Later, Drea would tell her what Cole had put on the table, a printed document. Handwritten sections, his signature at the bottom. 3 pages. A full account of the past 9 weeks, including his own role and his father's instructions, including the parking lot, including the plagiarism report filed against Drea. He had not looked at anyone when he put it down, just set it there and walked out. She thought about that for a long time afterward, about what it cost, about the difference between understanding something and doing something with the understanding. The board convened an emergency session that night. She did not know the details until the following morning. The interim director called her in at 9 a.m. She sat across from a woman whose voice she cataloged as precise and measured, someone who said less than she knew. But what she said she meant fully. The evidence presented last night, the director began, along with the written account provided by a student, and the documented history provided by a former staff member, has been reviewed by the board. Amara waited. Elliot Ashford submitted his resignation to the Board of Governors, effective immediately. School will cooperate with an independent review of his conduct, and the relevant materials have been provided to legal counsel. And Cole Ashford, Amara said. A pause. That's more complicated, the director said. I'm not asking for him to be expelled, Amara said. I want to be clear about that. Silence. The specific quality of silence that meant someone had expected something different. You're not? The director said. He's 20 years old, Amara said. He has spent his entire life being taught that this is how the world works. Removing him from this school doesn't change what he was taught. It just puts him somewhere else without any reason to be different. She paused. I want him to stay. And I want the school to have a process, a real one, not a meeting that happens once a semester and produces nothing, that holds every student accountable regardless of their family's relationship to this institution. The director was quiet for a long moment. That's a significant ask, she said. Yes, Amara said. It is. Another pause. Your scholarship has been formally confirmed, the director said. With a written apology from the institution. Ms. Walton's record has been cleared entirely. Mr. Hayes has been cleared of all access violations. She paused. Coach Briggs has been offered reinstatement. He hasn't accepted yet. He'll need time, Amara said. I expect so. The director paused once more. Mrs. Rivers, what you did last night. I asked people to look at something, Amara said. That's all. A silence that carried something in it. Not the performed admiration of a person making a speech. Something quieter than that. The recognition of one person seeing another one, clearly. Yes, the director said. I suppose that is what you did. She visited Coach Briggs that Sunday. He answered the door before she finished knocking, which meant he had heard her coming up the walk and had been waiting. He made coffee. She heard the kettle, the cups, the particular domestic sequence of someone who knew how to take care of a space, and they sat at his kitchen table and she told him what had been decided. He was quiet through most of it. They offered reinstatement, she said. I got the letter, he said. Are you going to take it? A long pause. I don't know yet, he said. I need to think about whether I can go back to a place where I spent 6 years looking the other way, and call it something different just because I stopped. You kept records for 6 years, she said, in case someone gave you a reason to use them. That's not nothing. It's not enough either, he said. She didn't argue with that. It wasn't her place to argue with that. Whatever you decide, she said, what you gave me made this possible. I wanted you to know that. He was quiet for a moment. You're 19 years old, she said. Yes, she said. So how do you sound like you've been doing this for 30 years? She thought about it honestly. Because I've been doing a version of it since I was 9, she said, learning to trust what I know even when I can't see it. He made a sound, not quite a laugh, not quite something else. The sound of a person who has just heard something true and doesn't have a clean response to it. I'll think about the reinstatement, he said. That's all I'm asking, she said. The following weekend, her father came. They drove to the cemetery on Saturday morning. The kind of morning that couldn't decide between late autumn and early winter, the trees still holding some color, the ground cold, the sky doing something with light that people with eyes would probably call beautiful, and that she could feel on her face as warmth from a specific angle. They parked, walked in. She held her father's arm, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. James Rivers did not speak as they walked. He understood that this was not a moment for speaking. She crouched when they reached the stone, placed her hand flat against it. She knew every letter of it with her fingertips, the way she knew things she had touched 10,000 times, completely without effort, the knowledge living in her hands rather than her mind. She didn't speak for a long time. She let herself be there, fully, without folding anything down, without managing the weight of it into something more portable. She let it be exactly as heavy as it was. Then she said quietly, I've been paying a debt that wasn't mine to pay. She felt her father go still beside her. I'm not going to do that anymore, she said. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep wanting things. I'm going to take detours. She paused. Not in spite of you, because of you. You taught me that wanting things was as allowed. That needing things was allowed. That love was not something you owed someone by making yourself smaller. She pressed her hand once more against the stone. Then she stood. Her father put his hand on her shoulder. She felt the specific weight of it, the weight of a person who had been waiting a long time for this moment and was not going to say anything that might interrupt it. They stood there together for another minute. The cold and the quiet and the specific weight of a place where someone she loved was resting. Then she turned away. They walked back to the truck slowly, her hand in the crook of his arm. He said nothing until they were nearly there. You okay? He said. Yes, she said. She meant it the way you meant things when they were actually true. Not to close a conversation, not to reassure someone, but because the word fight exactly. He squeezed her arm once. Got in the truck. She stood by the passenger door for just a moment before getting in, her face turned up toward the sky she could not see, feeling the light on it. Then she got in and they drove away. Monday evening, the dojo Sensei Cross was waiting when she arrived. He placed the blindfold in her hand without a word, the way he always had. She tied it, took a push on it on the mat. New student today, he said. She heard footsteps near the door, uncertain, slightly uneven, the footsteps of someone learning a new relationship with a space that didn't feel familiar yet. Not a child's steps, an adult moving carefully. The footsteps stopped at the edge of the mat. This is Amara, Sensei Cross said. She's going to work with you today. She turned toward the sound of the new student's breathing, nervous, the specific of someone bracing for something they hadn't figured out how to prepare for. What's your name? She asked. A pause. Then Devon, male. Young, 18, 19, she estimated from the voice, still finding where it landed. How long ago? She asked. He understood immediately what she meant. She heard it in the small sound he made before answering.
5 months, he said. Car scared?
She asked. A pause, not long. Yeah, he said. The simple honesty of someone who had decided not to pretend. Good, she said. That means you're paying attention to me. She heard him shift his weight. Something in him had expected something else. Reassurance, maybe. The performed kind that coated the surface of things without touching what was underneath. What do we do first, he said. First, you stay still and you listen. Don't try to figure anything out yet. Just listen. What am I listening for? Everything, she said. The room, the floor under your feet where the walls are, how the air moves when nothing is moving it. She paused. You've been doing this for 5 months. You've just been treating it like a problem to solve instead of a skill you're already building. A long silence. She heard his breathing change, something releasing that had been held. Not all the way, not yet, not this early, but the beginning of something. Okay, he said. She moved to stand beside him. Not in front of him, not directing from the outside, beside him. The way Sensei Cross had stood beside her once, when she was 9 years old, and the floor had felt like it was moving, and she hadn't known yet that it wasn't. They stood together in the quiet of the dojo. She heard the buildings settling around them, the distant sound of the street, the way the large room breathed when nothing in it was moving, the slight difference in air pressure near the equipment wall to the left, the way the corner to their right absorbed sound differently from the open center of the space. You hear that? She said quietly. What? The corner behind you. About 6 feet. Sound comes back a little faster from that direction than from the open floor in front of you. A silence. Then, oh, and to your left, the equipment wall is closer than it feels. The air moves differently there. Another silence, longer. Yeah, Devon said. And then different from the first, yeah, fuller, landing somewhere. Yeah, I can feel that. She nodded once. She thought about 9 years old. About standing in this dojo with a blindfold on for the first time and Sensei Cross saying, you are not learning to fight without your eyes. You are learning to see without them. She had not understood what that meant then. It had taken years. She was beginning to think that was the point, that some things also made sense once you had done them, long enough to understand what they were teaching. All right, she said. Let's start from the beginning. Devon turned toward her voice. She heard him settle his weight more evenly across both feet, already, in 2 minutes, something shifting that he hadn't been able to shift in 5 months of trying alone. And she began. She walked home from the dojo under a November sky her father would have called clear. Cold air in the city in autumn, leaves and stone, and the particular smell of a place that was still alive and moving, still changing, still becoming whatever it was going to be next. She walked without her cane. She knew this route. She thought about 9 weeks at Crestwood, about the sound of a door that wasn't quite shut, about a parking lot in the dark and what it felt like to stand in it after and know that the ground was still exactly where it had always been. About a room full of people seeing something clearly and choosing to keep looking. About Cole setting paper on a table and walking out without asking for anything in return. About Devon's voice saying, yeah, I can actually, and the thing that came into it when understanding arrived. About her mother, about the ice cream shop, about the weight that had been there for 10 years and was smaller now, not gone, not resolved into something clean, but smaller carried differently, on the hand rather than on the back, which changed everything about how far you could walk with it. She turned down the last street. The night was cold, the air was clean. Somewhere ahead of her, a door opened and closed, and she heard footsteps on a porch and a voice calling something to someone inside. And the ordinary sound of people living their lives in the particular way that only happened when no one was watching. She had been afraid once that her wanting things caused harm. She was not afraid of that anymore. She walked toward home through the dark, her feet knowing exactly where the ground was, trusting what they knew, not needing to see the bottom to understand that it was there.